Hey guys, it's Judy again. I wanted to come back and show you the rest of this particular painting. I did do half of this part, and as you can see, it's not exactly like the one they have. In fact, I've even seen them with multiple colors, like purples and greens and golds and reds. It's really whatever you're thinking about doing at the time. So what I still have left to do is to do some highlighting, to do my animal print on this side and my stripes here, give a stripe down here, and then some of my swirly cues. As you can see, all the paint I used yesterday is still very wet because I covered it with the lid. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to use a different paintbrush today for this part, for this design here. I'm going to use this other, it's more of a round tip. Remember, you want to get it wet. It shouldn't be wet, but it needs to be wet enough to move stuff. So notice I have dark on the outside and light on the inside. So what you do first is you go through and you put all your outside. And remember, an animal print isn't just symmetrical. It doesn't just show up in straight lines and curves. It's on the edge of things. It's on the side of things. There's only half of it showing here. So you basically can put it wherever you want to. And you can shape it whatever way you want to. In the pattern that we have here, the example that they give us, most of them are just rounded blobs. I've seen it more with a little bit of a squiggle to it, and that's why you'll see most of mine have squiggles on them. And they don't, excuse me, they don't have to be a solid print, but they do have to be just like wherever you want them. And they have to be kind of close together. And so you might have one that's coming off the side, or one that's completely off the side, so you have just the brown there. Same thing here, you might have like half a squiggle that'll have something filled in, or over here you may have a round one that's going to have some of that color in it. The key here is it doesn't have to be consistent in shape or in size. It's just whatever you feel like when you're drawing it. And you can probably go online and see other videos of people putting these patterns on. Remember, they're not all in one straight line. Some of them are sideways, some of them are at a totally different angle. And what I'm going to do is, while this is drying, once I get all these on here, excuse my cough, my allergies are showing. I'm going to work on updating my top of my piece. And so what you have are just two sides together, and they don't have to be one particular shape, one particular direction. They just have to come together somewhere. And they can be round, they can be oblong. Because remember, this is, you're trying to parody nature, and nature is perfectly imperfect, is the way I like to put it. So you really just keep going on and adding blobs. And when that dries, we're going to come back and add some color to the middle of it. And you just keep going. Remember, there's little half pieces, so you'll come in and fill that in. And if you want to, you can always copy the pattern and try to put your animal print in that same layout. My allergies. Someday I'm going to figure out something that's good for allergies. I don't know when that's going to be. So, and you don't have to worry about it being like, you see some of these are fatter, some of them are narrower. You can do it either way, whatever floats your boat. Now, I didn't want that on the orange, so let me grab a baby wipe and clean that up. And again, you want to get it in your hand just really narrowly. There you go. Yeah, I may have to touch up that orange right there, but but that would only take a minute to do. So, where was I? Let me add a little bit more to this. And so it's not about perfect, it's about nature not being perfect. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave that there. Rinse out my brush. Excuse my frog. So something else that I was telling you guys about was the use of frog tape. Well, you can use it for a lot of things, but one good thing that it's for, that you can use it for, is to paint stripes when you need to paint stripes. I don't know if I got that wide enough. I did not, so I'll tear another piece. And so what you do, you figure out, this is kind of in this shape, so what I'll do is I'll paint this part black. Then I will come in and I will paint that part black. And I will paint this part black. So it's going to be small stripes, big stripes. So let me put some black in my palette. I think I will use the brush I was using yesterday, which is the straight edge brush here. Tap off some of the moisture. And this, having the tape on there makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to be quite so worried about the other parts. And you want to make sure that you get the tape down really solidly because it will seep under if you don't. Then you're going to have a jagged edge. Now I do have to work a little bit on this side to be careful that I don't bomb out my leaf. Okay. And then I have to do this little part here, so I have to be careful with it as well. And I don't want to get too overzealous or I'll get into my beige. And sometimes when you've got a corner, you can turn your brush up like this, and it helps you get into that corner. And so, there's the black painted. And I will probably have to touch up a little bit of the orange. I'll let that dry for half a minute. Then I'll take the tape off. I don't want to leave it on too long. Let this dry. Now, one thing to remember when you're handling your paintbrush, especially one that's, let me get some clean water here, especially one that's more rounded tip or a smaller tip, is that you may find you have to be careful with the pressure that you apply. So, for example, this looks like a nice straight point, right? If you can see it. But if you apply pressure, then this brush is going to spread out. So that's why you'll see some of these over here are fatter and some are smaller, because I applied more pressure with the brush. So, first thing I'm going to do is get this tape off. And see, it did do a little bit of the edges. I didn't quite get the tape down as tight as I needed to, but it's not terribly bad. So now I've got that. And I could go back with like a small line of black paint. In fact, I may do that. Excuse my frog. So, the next thing I'm going to do is go back and fill in these holes. And it's real easy because it's just a blob. And you just pick up the paint on your brush and then just kind of follow the pattern and get your blob. Is it a circle? Is it a squiggle? Now, if you want to do a finer line, like I was talking about with the black, one of the things you are going to have to do is make sure you get enough paint on the brush to begin with. Because if you don't, then you're going to be inclined to want to press harder. And when you do that, the brush tip is going to go wider. And that means that you're not painting as small a line as you might have. And when you're painting, you may need to rearrange the position you're holding the brush in, whether it's a flat side or a pointy side. And this is not supposed to be perfect. Like I said, nature is perfectly imperfect. So you don't have to make this look like Van Gogh painted it. So after this, I'll probably go back and pick up those black stripes. I'll have to show you what this looks like with the ribbon on it later, because my husband's shop, he's working on getting it organized again. He was building a holder for our stained glass supplies. When we are getting ready to work on projects, we will sometimes, and I made a mistake, and you will do that too. I put my heel of my foot down, and now I've got splotches here. I may or may not fix those. I'll probably fix the worst offenders, but I'm not too worried about it. So this is really all there is to doing this animal print. And you can pick the design or the shape of the design that you want. But remember, it had to be dry before you went back with the second color, because if you didn't, then the colors would run together. And where I feel like I needed to pick up some more, I'll go back and add some more. So that's kind of the way this pattern is done. So, I'm not very good at drawing straight lines, so I'm going to put some more tape down, but I'm going to make sure that black is really dry before I do it. I don't think I'm going to get this off with this. No. So I'm going to have to touch this back up with regular paint, which is this paint. And it'll do most of it. I mean, it's a darker color, so you're going to see some of it. So you may have to hit it more than once. If you happen to put your finger in it the way I did. So that's that color. I need to pick up the orange and hit where I did that in the orange. And if you hate getting paint on yourself, go get an old apron and use it to protect your clothes, or just wear old clothes. And sorry for my frog. And now I'm going to let that dry and see if I need to hit it again. So what I'm going to do with the green, and I've already put the color in the container, is I'm going to give the leaf a little bit of structure. Excuse me. And it's real simple. You just kind of like draw a line up. And it doesn't have to be a good solid line. I mean, you just want it to be visible, it's not the biggest part of the picture. And so, according to their pattern, now they don't have the, they didn't paint in the side parts on the leaf right here. And I haven't decided if I want to do that yet. But that gives me at least the middle of the leaf. And by the side parts, I mean where it would have little branches off of it. So, that's that part. Now let me use my dryer again. All right. So what I'm going to do next, take a piece of tape, two pieces of tape, and I'm going to set them kind of right in the middle, or as close to the middle as I can get. Need to get the folded piece out of it. And I'm focused on the top of the piece of tape, not the bottom. And I want to rub it really good to make sure it's down. And then I'm going to take another piece of tape and do the same thing on the next white stripe. And try to get about halfway down. And again, rub it down because you want to make sure that no paint gets under it. Then I'm going to take a little bit different shape brush. This is a filbert brush. It has this shape to it. Oh, I'm tired of clearing my throat. And you're probably tired of hearing it. So I'm really going to focus on, in fact, I made sheet a little. Let's add a second piece of tape to each one. So that I only get it as big as I want it to be. I just want it to be a little stripe. Okay. I'm going to do that again on the other piece. I don't need that much tape. And is that long enough? I hope. barely. Okay, so what I'm doing is making 2 small stripes of black in between the bigger ones. Okay, so now I've got the paint on this brush, and I'm just going to paint right here. Now I have to be careful again around the leaf. Just move your brush around till you get at the right position. And this one's a little more complicated because it's more of a V, but just paint till you don't see the white. And you may have to touch up the green. I probably will. So, there's the black. I'm gonna get some more clean water. Then I'm gonna put the hair dryer on it again. And I did see a spot of orange that I wanted to touch up. And one thing that they'll tell you is don't be too critical. Remember, most people that see this are not going to be going, oh, you missed a spot here, you missed a spot there. The only person that's going to do that is you. Okay. So, whoop, I forgot to put water back in it. One thing you'll have to remember is keep your water dish away from where you're actually working, or you're going to end up dumping it. So I want your comments in the bottom of this video. I want to know what you think about how hard this looks. And I'll be willing to bet it's not hard. Okay, so let me take this tape off. And see, I have a little bitty stripe that fills in where the other was. And it's a little splotched, but that's not going to hurt in the long run. So, we're 90% done. What's left is I have to put the green squiggles here. And what you'll have to do if you have 2 colors of green paint is remember which color green paint you painted the leaf in, because that's what color the squiggle should be. Again, get your brush wet. And here's where you might need to get a little bit more paint on the brush, but don't press down when you're using it. So this has it coming out and down this way. And you might need to touch up a couple of spots. And then off that same one, it's going up and into here. And see, I didn't have near enough paint on that brush. And up, down like this. Now this should have been smaller, but it's there and it's staying. So you find here I'm touching up and I'm making kind of a mess of it, but you get the idea, right? One thing I am going to do is take a little bit of that edge off of there, right here, if I can. if I have to, I can touch up in those spots too. So I have the little, it's not as pretty as theirs, but I do have the little vines coming off of it. Excuse me. And then the very last thing is to add the black lines all the way through. Now you could do this with a paint pen, but as I said, if you use a paint pen, you have to take it outside and spray seal it, which is fine, but I'd like to try to do a different way. So let me see which brush. Whoops, you don't want to let if you drip water on it, get it off of there, because it actually will stain the paint because this is water-based paint. I've made that mistake. So get it wet, and again, just like we did here, my husband just entered the house, which is why you heard all that noise. But just like we did here, we're going to get a lot of paint on the brush and not apply a lot of pressure, but get the line on it. And I may need to pick up some more black paint, but I'm going to start with the leaf. And this is where, if you want to, you can keep the pattern in front of you so you can use it as a model. Notice she went around the leaf twice with the black this time. So that's a lot of paint. And let me daub some of that off. There we go. And it's really just a light outline. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just to draw attention, and you might be better than I am at getting a small line. Now, because I've gotten a bigger line, I probably won't go back with a second one. They make really small brushes. But she did like come in here and do a sweep there and a sweep here. So you can add that in. It's just to give it some depth. And then in the orange, you're simply going to go around the middle of the pumpkin. So you just drag it like you did the other one. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't draw a straight line very well. That's why I use that tape. You want to be careful when you go back to pick up more paint because it's going to show a blob. So set it down really softly and don't apply a lot of pressure. You want to just get the tip of that brush on there. And so you have to keep refilling the brush because this is a very dry surface, and when you add the paint it gets even more dry. And so she did go back and do 2 lines. I think I won't because I did a thicker line than she had done in her original pattern. Okay, so we've got the pumpkin done. Now we've got to do the outside, and we're really just doing these parts. We're not really doing the middles because they're kind of covered with this. And you're really just going to follow the outside, not coming down in here, but just starting here. And be careful not to put your hand down in the paint that may be wet. Now remember, this all needs to be dry before you start this, because otherwise it's going to blend with the paint, not paint over it. And they do make a variety of sizes of brushes that you can use for this. Like they make one that has a very fine point, but what I find, because I try to compensate, is I press harder when I use those, and then I end up with just as big a line. And again, following just the outside. I almost grabbed the wrong color just then. Now you can't seal it until it's completely dry because the seal will blend with it. It's just like adding another paint over it. But this is basically it. And as you can see, is it perfect? No, but was it fun to paint? Absolutely. And it doesn't look too different from the original. But what I have to do now is get it dry so that I can apply the sealer. I am going to use the DuraClean sealer, and you can just use one of your paint brushes for it, but it has to be absolutely dry. So, and that's why you don't want to apply it in great big blobs, because it takes longer to dry. Now when you do a paint party with me, when we get to this point, we'll dry it really, really, really well. It is my goal to have the holes pre-drilled for your ribbons. So once we varnish it and it gets dry, you'll be able to take it home and hang it on your door when you get home. It's getting there. It's not there yet. I did get some blobs on there that need to dry better. The nice thing about these tablecloths is if you let them dry, you can just fold them up and use them over and over again. You don't have to wash them or worry about that. Just let them dry and fold them up and reuse them. Shower curtain liner works really well for this too. I think we're there. So, the next step is to apply the varnish. I need to get clean water in my bucket. And then I'm going to use a little bit bigger brush because I have to cover the entire surface with it. Another thing that'll work with this is some of those small kitchen sponges work really well. And you're going to do the same thing with this that you do with the paint. Shake it up, make sure it's mixed well, and then pour it. Now this you could pour just straight on, but it's easier to miss where you've actually varnished. And so what you're going to do, get rid of that piece there, is you're going to take your brush, and again, a damp brush, not a wet brush, and you're going to start on one side, left, right, top or bottom, and go all the way across in one direction first. So I'm going to go up and down from left to right. And you just paint it on. I don't know if you can see that with the water in the way. But it's going to dry to a nice... They do make a... you can choose whether you want glossy or non-glossy. And I can see this was not dry. Can you? I don't know if you can see that it's running a little bit. And you can actually see black paint on my brush. So... I thought it was dry, but it was not. I know the middle is dry, so I'll keep going with that and leave the bottom there for a minute. So you want to make sure you get the entire surface done, and so you have to have good light to see specifically where it's going to be. So you can see while it's wet where it was, and then when it dries, you can get glossy or you can get a flat finish if you prefer not to have a glossy finish. And you want to you don't want it to be real thick on there. You just want it to be on there. And you're doing this so that when you hang it outside in the elements, it's less resistant to the weather. If you weren't using one of the rounds, for instance, if you cut a piece of plywood and did a design there, you would have to seal the entire project because that wood would be more porous. When these blanks were cut, they were cut with a laser, so the sides are actually burned, and they're not going to have as big an issue with the weather. So, I think I got most of the orange here. So this is all you do to seal it. And after this, in our paint party, assuming that I've gotten the holes pre-punched in it, then we'll spend some time. And my sister said she would help because she's done a lot of bows and things with the part where you attach the ribbon to your door hanger so you can go hang it up at home when you get home. Oh, there's some more black. Well, this one's not going to be pretty. I may have to go back and repaint parts of it. So I'm not going to put any more down here. In fact, I'm going to start the dryer again. But you should be able to see that it's kind of glossy. And what that does is it protects the paint that you put on there. Because just as you saw it running down here, like where I did where I was adding the gloss, that's what rainwater will do to it too if you don't have it sealed. So this is why we're going to have hair dryers at each station in the parties. And you got to pull it around this way. The cord's not that long. But you can see that it's getting there. I'll pick it up this way. But it's still maintaining a certain level of gloss. I can see that I need to go back over it. What I'm going to do is go back, but I'll paint in the opposite direction. So where I went up and down before, I'll go left to right. And that should help me make sure that I've hit all the spots I needed to hit. So, that's a good start on it. But I wanted to show you how this was generally finished. Like I said, the next thing that you're going to do to this after I knock everything off is the holes. You'll run your ribbon through the holes from the front to the back. You'll tie a good knot in it, and then you can take it home and hang it on your door. Now you could, for balance purposes, you could run the ribbon through and then pull it up and tie a knot instead of just tying a knot in the back. That should balance it better. But that's the kind of thing we can talk about at the party when you're there. But this is basically, I still have to do some touch-ups, but this is basically the finished product. And you can do this. It's so simple. If I can do it, I know you can do it. Anyway, if you have any questions, message me on Facebook, and I'll be sure and try to reach out to you. Otherwise, I look forward to having you in a class soon. Bye now.